Welcome to the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. I'm the big beefy boy, and today I'm joined by a couple of marks. John Morton is back, Johnny Morts, and Kieran Dunphy. No, it's not.
It's the fabulous Freebirds.
Yes,
Freebirds rule.
Yeah, I like it. Morrow's back because he did such a great job defending AEW last time.
No, I didn't.
No, a lot of people think that you were actually siding with me based on the very carefully selected clips that I chose to edit and put up on TikTok. And basically, the one that generated a bit of steam recently was the AEW have fallen off a cliff. That one got a good reaction on TikTok. Lots of comments on that, but not anything overtly negative. Actually, a lot of people seem to be agreeing with what we had to say. But on the one where it was Tony Khan as a Nepo baby, a few people have got in touch. Michael Brennan says, this is embarrassing to watch. Now, Michael also got in touch in regards to AEW has fallen off a cliff. He had some very valid statements. Has it fallen off a cliff or has WWE got better? But the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show, whoever looks after that, just said, this is embarrassing to watch. And his reply was, as is the name Brendog, because that's Michael Brennan's name on TikTok.
Brendog would be a pretty good wrestling name.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah. I actually...
Dog catcher gimmick.
He goes, no, that's boringly embarrassing for me to, or for whoever looks after the TikTok, to be mentioning the name Brendog. But I just said, sorry, Brendog are bad. I mean, Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show said that. Someone like to point out, Slayer said Triple H marrying the boss's daughter. He'd be employed otherwise. So he's also a Nepo baby.
Yeah.
Nepo baby by marriage.
By marriage, definitely. Yeah.
I think that's a fair point. Everyone's a Nepo baby in wrestling.
That's the way.
Not everyone.
Dominic Mysterio, Nepo baby.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them, but like it's always been the case in wrestling, you know?
But
shop, family businesses for many years.
everyone in wrestling, they all have a daddy.
Not all of them have wrestler daddies.
They do.
It's a lot of wrestler daddies.
Yeah, a lot of wrestling daddies out there. Pat Patterson.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Where are you gonna keep going with this?
Yeah, well, you know where I'm going. Mel Phillips. Yeah, Mel Phillips.
He's in the news.
Again?
Yeah, there was something.
Well, he's dead. What's he still up to? Is he still have a
There was something
foot fetish?
Cooking on toes with Tony Atlas.
There was something.
Now, let's differentiate there. Tony Atlas has a valid sexual kink.
Like
Mel
Tarantino.
Phillips is a paedophile.
There's a difference.
Oh,
yeah.
there is a distinction.
Tony Atlas was sucking on adult toes.
Tony Atlas had merchandise branded that was about encouraging women to step on him. Yeah,
Nice. I like Tony Atlas.
stand on his face, etc., etc.
He's
That's
just
what you're
well
into.
into feet.
He's definitely the Quentin Tarantino of wrestlers for many reasons.
I like that. I like to think of Tony Atlas just getting stepped on, kind of like in a way that he's been sexually gratified.
Yeah, it's
But
empowering.
that's
for
exactly what's happening.
Yeah, after being put through Simba Samba or Samba Simba.
Like Google Tony Atlas feet, and you will get a treasure trove.
Nice. I'm going to do that. You should do that
Mel
too.
Phillips, on the other hand,
Don't Google
if
that.
you Google Mel Phillips feet, you're going to get an account of a child abuse sex ring.
Yeah.
So
and
be
he
warned.
also covered in the Vince McMahon documentary on the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. The S7_ just said, these guys are so gash.
Nice.
Is that, That's cool, right?
No, but
Is that Irish gash or
gash in England, I would imagine. I assume this is English because if not, he was saying these guys are so vagina.
Yeah.
Because that's
Well,
what.
no, but also...
So the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show replied, gash in Ireland means something different. For example, it would totally be right for us to say your mother has a hairy gash. Like that, that's the context.
I mean, we don't know that for a fact, but chances are.
I'm just saying statement wise, like if I was putting in context for him,
Yeah.
Okay.
you know, I wasn't saying his ma specifically.
Your old one's gash is in bits.
Yeah, Vital Mansion, you had a bit to say.
Yeah,
to
Vital Mansion. Like, I saved this one. Mental how much they're crying. Fuck you, Vital Mansion. I didn't cry at all.
You didn't? No, you were defending AEW.
I don't
Were you
know what
crying?
his
Were you crying a
context
bit inside though?
was. I was crying inside, yeah.
Yeah.
I was getting tag
Salty
teamed.
tears.
I
He was
think
getting old.
you can kind of feel it through the
I
pod.
was
Like,
getting tag teamed. They stuck me in the middle and they tag teamed me.
Yeah, we hide and right you.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
You were Michael Cole and we were both hide and right.
I was Katie Vick.
Yeah. And then Cal just says, Tony books his shows like an indie promotion that can only do a show once a month. Good matches, but no storylines. And that was basically the crux of our argument. Did you listen to the pod?
yeah.
Where did you fall?
I agreed with a lot of points and disagreed with some other points.
We'll leave it there.
Right down the middle on the fence.
I don't. I just don't want them. I don't want them coming for me.
Yeah, well, all the Hogan fans came for you already.
I've had a nightmare this year with the Hulkamaniacs.
Yeah, Mule and Quinn.
And I don't need to mule anymore.
Right, we're going to get into today's topic. Controversial storylines. And why can't wrestling really delve into them? Or can they?
Yes.
Or should they?
Should they? Yeah. Like, so wrestling as television, like, I feel that they can't really lean into a lot of real world problems, particularly anymore because of the culture that we're living in. So they can't really, not that they should, but look at topics such as maybe racism, look at topics such as war, or like they used to. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but in other television shows, they wouldn't be treated by that same metric. So you can have racist characters that ultimately become undone, or you can have themes of drugs, or you can have themes of war and death and that kind of thing littered throughout a television show, but you can't do that in wrestling. And I wonder why people make that distinction.
I don't know if people do make that distinction. I think wrestling is considered, generally in the culture as being like a kind of more base form of entertainment, like because of its roots as effectively a carnival show, and different versions of that throughout the decades.
Well, acting is somewhat similar to that.
Oh yeah, I mean,
acting's roots.
So many things are. I think the main problem with professional wrestling, in terms of its broader cultural consciousness, is that the type of wrestling that people were getting commonly throughout the 60s and 70s was of probably a higher standard than it would have been in the 80s, certainly. And the 80s is really where it changed, because you have the first kind of mass marketed wrestling product that was going into further corners of the US.
Getting sponsors,
but also specifically being marketed to children. And then the level of when wrestling broke through in that big, like, national consciousness way in like the early to mid 80s, they kind of mass marketed it, and it was a very dumbed down version of it. So I think the expectations, through the 40 years of Vince McMahon, is that generally people's perception of wrestling because of that is that storylines are dumb and, everything is nonsensical and kind of a little bit buffoonish.
Cartoonish.
Yeah.
As a fan, would that piss you off, Mauro, that people have that perception of wrestling?
It doesn't piss me off because it makes perfect sense. Like,
That's buffoonish and dumb.
With that, the perception of it is that it's buffoonish,
Maybe
cartoonish and dumb.
Part cartoonish, part buffoonish.
The perception totally makes sense. Like, because look, we all got into wrestling probably at a time when,
As a kid,
when it was buffoonish, like Hulkamaniacs, drink your milk, take your vitamins.
Yeah, and it does get you into it. I mean, that's why you're kind of attracted to it, because it was marketed for kids, and then you're a kid and you're looking at all these like massively colourful big characters.
but even then they dealt with war. They dealt with the Gulf War in terms of WrestleMania 7, and some people look back on that and be like, "Oh, that's a bit too far." Maybe it's silly in the way it was presented, but like, you shouldn't be really touching upon those themes of it. But why the fuck not?
I think part of the problem is
other television shows deal with war.
I think the problem there fundamentally was that you are, it's not like it's a fucking Francis Ford Coppola. Coppola's making a movie and you go, well, there might be some nuance kind of, take on this. They're developing this film, Apocalypse Now, while the Vietnam War is going on. There was Vietnam, like MASH was on the TV, even though I know it was like the Korean War, but like it was sidestepped enough and it was nuanced and had a very considered take on stuff that was actually going on at the time. Whereas when you look at the Gulf War and wrestling, like it's done in a really hokey, carny way,
overtly patriotic,
really exploitative, playing into like these Middle Eastern tropes. And the fundamentals of it are that there's millions of people in America who have family members that are currently out fighting that war and dying in that war, and then they're seeing this really lame panto version of it being broadcast in order to
Sell a few tickets.
Sell a few
bit of
tickets.
heat for Sergeant Slaughter, the traitor.
Yeah, as it's happening. So I think that's the firm distinction there.
Did that not used to happen during it's almost like a case of propaganda, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
When you look at Marvel, you look at Captain America,
Yeah,
and
but-
how he was created off the back of kind of World War II. Like, that's another form of entertainment.
Yeah, but I think I don't think anybody's going, this stuff isn't valid. I mean, like, post World War II, there was this like influx of various kind of like Japanese foreign menace. And
Yeah,
kind
Fritz
of
von
like-
Erich, he was a Nazi.
Fritz von Erich was a Nazi, and he wasn't the only one. There was a lot of people who had those gimmicks, but it's post-war. They can fit them into storylines. They can create some heat from it. There's a catharsis in the like watching the American babyface beat up this, heel
Captain
German.
America
Or,
straight up punched Hitler in the face.
he decked him.
Yeah,
he decked him. But I think that type of like live viewing experience, like half sport, half entertainment. Oh no. But that view through like the prism of fucking shit that just happened a couple of years ago generally tends to be fine. It's like when stuff is actively happening, which the Gulf War was, which Muhammad Hassan again was another
That's what I wanted to really get into.
character that hit on the nerve of like
It's funny though, because
bit of bad luck, but also
if you go
bad
back
timing.
to like the birth of pro wrestling in Japan with AJW and Ricky Dozan, he was fighting in Japan, like the heels were the Americans coming in,
Asians.
and he was fighting the Americans coming in, and then on the American side of things, it was Americans fighting the foreign invaders, the Japanese guys, the Fritz von Erich as the Nazi and so on. But then there was another thing happening in American wrestling at that time as well. If you look at particularly WWF, like Bruno Sammartino was their big immigrant world champion.
Italian-American.
Italian-American.
Pedro
Julian
Morales was
McIntyre.
Spanish Morales.
Same, yeah.
Hulk Hogan got his name because they wanted to attract Irish Americans.
That was the thing, yeah.
So yeah, like, but they have to lean into the zeitgeist and they have to lean into what's cultural and what's relevant now.
Yes.
So like, say the Black Lives Matter movement, like, could have WWE leaned into it? I know they've tried to do kind of black militant stuff,
Well,
and they almost did with the Nation and the New Day. They were thinking about it.
But they did it with the like the Black Lives Matters protests to a degree, because like the whole retribution angle was that, and then you got like pretty much
But that was more Antifa, wasn't it?
It was a little bit, it was a meld, but that's what you do. I mean, like, so many wrestling characters and so many stables are a mix of a couple of different cultural things.
Like Joe Gacy came in as like this woke kind of liberator guy, or I don't know. He was going to be initially this really woke guy.
Was he a heel?
Yeah.
See, I think that's where the problem comes with, like, with WWE under Vince, is that there's never like a foreign babyface. Like, they're nearly always presented as
Yeah, they had
bad guy.
they had a chance with. I mean, yeah, like Nakamura would have been the one
That's
who
what
really
I
would have
was
made a distinct difference, just in terms of how Japanese,
The presentation of Japanese
particularly Asian wrestlers. But yeah, there really has been. I mean, even the Alberto Del Rios, the Jinder Mahals were all a very stereotypical.
Yeah,
Del Rio was a little bit more new. The gimmick was more nuanced
but
than
a
he
lot
was
of
as a
gimmicks are
performer.
based on ethnicities and stereotypes of ethnicities.
Or like the subversion then of that, because I think that was one of the joys of the Alberto Del Rio character initially, because you're going, oh, it's a Mexican wrestler, but he's presented like the $1 Million Man. He's like a this era's Ted DiBiase type character. So that kind of subverted what a lot of Mexicans, like, you were still like not even 10 years gone from like what were they called, like the Mexicools in WWE, where they were riding a fucking lawnmower to the ring. And then also like Eddie and Chavo to a degree. I think Eddie
Light Sheet Steel.
they played into a
Latino
degree of a
Heat.
stereotype, but they played into the stereotype, but there was Eddie Guerrero was such a good performer that he could do it with a
He
degree
was
of
able to
nuance, a
transcend
nod and a wink.
Well, this was
You know?
endemic. Like, look at Kamala.
Jesus.
And like a horrible gimmick, but really well played, really well paid. And that guy,
Hakeem the Dream.
Akeem, the African Dream.
Yeah.
Like, that was just a piss take on Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah.
like I will say just in defense of Kamala again, but like Kamala was a kind of very cool gimmick, really well performed, but just it was just a thing that nowadays you wouldn't get near doing. And the guy who played it had a degree of nuance, but
He's from Memphis.
Yeah,
And he was a Ugandan headhunter.
yeah.
You know,
But he initially had I forget his original name now. It's after like
Kimala.
No, just the dude who played him, Jim Harris. He was like Sugar Bear Harris, I think maybe was his gimmick, and he wasn't making any money with it, so he reverted. Like it wasn't like Vince McMahon put him in that. He was like, I'm going to play a Ugandan savage.
Can you write characters like that? Say you're a television writer. You've written for television. I wouldn't suggest that you'd write such stereotypical characters. However, can you write characters like that for fiction?
Oh yeah, I mean.
Still,
I mean, look, like any kind of fiction is kind of, we're still predicated on a lot of like, particularly in big, broad storytelling, like, like Marvel say, or like, with pro wrestling as well. You're really dependent on like types of characters. And I think what you need to do and what wrestling has, I think, gotten better at is like subverting types and not going, hey, this type of person is like this and this type of person is like this type of person is bad. You know what I mean? Which even up to like 5 years ago, we were still getting that with like Vince McMahon booking, where it was like, okay, what's the like my world champion heel should be an environmentalist and a vegan and enjoy reading books, which is literally Daniel Bryan Danielson's real life persona. Yeah. But it's how you're positioned, and if you get a smart enough performer who can like go beyond the stereotype. That's been the problem with WWE, is that wrestlers usually have had to play some form of stereotype for 40 years. And we've seen it all. Every like black guy who's coming out, not every black guy, but like most of them, it's that whole, look at him. He just loves to have fun, which is like Vince's line in Michael Cole's ear. And it's every black man playing like, this kind of dancing, fucking jigging, smiling, happy go lucky, which the New Day again were booked as, but then we're smart enough to like, okay, like how can we actually make this relate to like our culture and subvert the ideas of what this could be and subvert the ideas of what like a faction of African American men.
They started off as ministers, didn't they? Kind of
because that's one of those many gimmicks that Vince McMahon has always had a hard on for. Like some kind of like he's been mad to do a religious character. He tried to bring in the Flying Nuns, Friar Ferguson. He really wanted to do Mordecai. Had it as well. He really wanted to do this gimmick, and then Devon Dudley got saddled as well.
Reverend Devon, Deacon Batista.
But the New Day was like a little bit of a riff on that then again, and he really wanted. He was like, just be like a like gospel singers. I want a faction that's like a bunch of stereotypical, deep south.
They were good performers.
I've already had my cheerleaders. I want my gospel singers. Yes, but like in other fiction, you will have, say black ministers. And playing that type of stereotypical character, and that wouldn't be kind of frowned upon, would it?
No, I don't think there's a problem with playing the characters. It's always down to how the character is played. I mean,
presented.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of bad wrestlers that got good gimmicks that could have, developed with a little bit more like nuance and subtlety about it, and then you got gimmicks that landed on people that were playing a very stereotypical thing, but they found ways to make it relatable and make it nuanced, make it fresh.
That's an interesting point that you're bringing up. I don't mean to cut across it, but I'm going to say it before I forget it. I've done it anyway. Piece of shit, O'Keefe. This is what your therapist is telling you. Stop doing while you have no friends. Is there an argument, because you were talking about bad wrestlers maybe with good gimmicks and vice versa, to have a gimmick and have wrestlers like actors audition for that gimmick?
Well, that's kind of happened, but not in a very specific way. I think
instead of just being saddled with it.
You know what? Here, my take on it, it's kind of like, it's a little bit like workshopping, you know what I mean? It's like those kind of I think you need to be a little bit like a bit of a Mike Lee process in a way to bring it into an acting thing.
Isn't that what NXT is kind of supposed to be?
Yeah, I think you should be like, you should definitely have gimmicks in the drawer, but then you need to look at what certain performers are
capable of.
Can bring go it's that came up recently. I think on Jim Ross. It maybe came up on Jim Ross's podcast, but that like. The Goldust character was there, and then when Steve Austin was coming in, there was a consideration that he was going.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
So there was certain gimmicks to have. Same with Sabu and the Sultan.
And you can kind of see with say the Hollywood aspect and the Hollywood blondes of Steve Austin, and he's coming in the Hollywood aspect of Goldust. That's very interesting.
But also based, like if you look at the two of them as a case example, two guys who came in similar enough times to each other, and the gimmicks that were presented,
and have similar enough looks too.
Similar enough looks. Both guys from Texas. Both guys like hot kind of like upper mid card young stars in WCW, but Steve Austin is playing a charismatic, long haired, Hollywood themed, braggadocious, kind of extravagant, ego-filled version of the character.
Yeah,
which you can easily apply then to Goldust.
Dustin Rhodes.
Dustin Rhodes is
he's playing a Texan badass,
son of a plumber, Texan badass, working class, kind of big brawler, kind of like slightly cowboy fucking teamed. So when you look at the trajectory of them then coming into WWF in late 95, early 96, and the fact that Austin was potentially earmarked for the Goldust part, but what worked the best, it wasn't going, which one of these guys is the most flamboyant who can play the flamboyant guy. The thing that really worked with Goldust was the subversion of type.
Yeah.
Because they're going, oh yeah, actually, like maybe Dusty Rhodes' kid, could really invert that whole persona and channel it into a completely different thing. Maybe there's a degree of that being a rib on Dusty, which was rumored. The idea that like we got Dusty's son now, we're going to make him, which you can look. This is Vince McMahon in 1995. He wasn't looking at the Goldust character he was trying to get like Adrian Adonis heat. It was going to be completely based on homophobia. Yeah. Dustin Runnels took that ball, ran with it, and created a way more like nuanced, fucking intricate psychosexual character rather than just like.
Is that wrong though? Because like as
that was hugely controversial.
Yeah, exactly. I think we covered it in.
That was massively controversial to the point where like
the networks were stepping in.
Yeah, and other.
But why? Like, what's the problem with covering homophobia? Because that's what Goldust was ultimately doing. He was being brash and abrasive, but he was bringing out real homophobia within people. And that's a trait in television. That's a trait in movies. Why is it wrong in wrestling?
I don't know if it's wrong. I just think there's a massive lack of trust from like I'm not speaking from like a network perspective because like I don't know what they think, but like from a fan perspective, do you trust WWE? Not WWE now with Triple H because that might be a little bit different. But do you trust WWE to handle maybe sensitive storylines with like the care that they need and deserve? Because like under Vince, I wouldn't trust them to do that. Like you go back to what I think is one of the most egregious booking decisions of all time, given the storyline. Was it WrestleMania 19?
Booker T and Triple H.
Yeah.
Like
horrible.
I knew you were saying that when you said egregious. I was like Booker T, Triple H.
Yeah, it has to be. And like so, you with the build up to that match, the only potential outcome was Booker T to win.
Yeah.
Given that they decided to do that racial type almost.
Well, Harley Race did to Ron Simmons.
Yeah.
That's exactly. But Ron Simmons won.
Ron Simmons won. And like there was probably a make good then, nearly, well, not 20 years later, but like considerably 2 decades later when you got, they did a similar thing with Kofi Kingston and Daniel Bryan, and it was Vince McMahon himself telling them, doing that old tired like people like you don't get to be champions.
Yeah.
Bad booking, but Vince in his head is probably going, oh yeah, like, but I'll give it to him this time. Like, well, delayed gratification. It should have happened with Booker. Should have also happened with Kofi as well. But the fact that that's the way they need to portray that storyline, I was really glad Kofi won. But like, so like you were just completely expecting that it could go the other way. Like,
But that's what you want then. With wrestling though,
because
you like we on the AEW one, we had previously stated that we can telegraph the results. Who's going to win.
I predicted every result at the last
exactly.
Review,
So last WrestleMania,
I got WrestleMania as well, both nights.
I got so many WrestleMania. I got wrong this year, and I actually really. But it wasn't in a way where I was dissatisfied or anything. It's like, it was really surprising me, and
because I think Triple H's booking is a lot different from Vince's in the sense that like. It's more logical, therefore you can easier choose.
It's also more long term. Like you can now for the first time, in a long time, you can watch it properly episodically and be like, "There's 10 storylines going on here, and they're all playing,
and they're all interlinking." But I want
things are interlinking. Finally,
I want to get back to the Kofi point though, because you said you don't know. Like obviously, common sense would prevail that Kofi prevails, right? but you didn't know if Kofi was going to win or not. So therefore, that's better.
No, I
not
don't think so.
really.
Not in that specific scenario.
Yeah.
Like in the greater scheme of things, sometimes, yes, it is better to not know the outcome or to be totally unsure of the outcome. But I think because
it's like a roller coaster, though. You have to have your ups. You have to have your
no,
downs.
but there's certain storylines that
You
aren't
have to have
designed.
your beat. Maybe that storyline was designed to get Triple H over as a bigger heel. So therefore, at WrestleMania 20, when he does pass the torch, which ended up being.
Don't do it, Shane.
I'm not saying his name.
Yeah, but see,
but like that was a bigger moment. Then
you don't come up with a different storyline.
You don't get that.
You
don't get that moment with himself and Eddie at the end of WrestleMania 20 if you give that belt to Booker T.
You do. You can still do. You can do
like,
all.
You can lose it back.
You can do with good logical storytelling and booking. You can do pretty much anything. So like when it comes to Kofi and Daniel Bryan, it's like not because we're going, will it happen, won't it happen? It's just because we're conditioned to expect bullshit.
The racist
like,
wins.
Then 6 months later, Kofi loses his title in 8 seconds to Brock, which is exactly the kind of stuff we are used to. The worst type of decision.
Brock over bigger.
I don't think that did happen for
Brock. Just didn't need to be over, any bigger than he was.
Did Kofi need to have a longer run?
No.
I
actually, Kofi's run was fine, and ending there was the right decision.
It was pretty solid, and he was given really good logical feuds during his. Unfortunately, he was and he wasn't positioned as a top guy. But I think for anybody, just that was the thing in and of itself. It's like a Kofi Kingston. Championship run. You get to see that happening for the first time. The guy's serious tenure with the company. Yeah. Grant, they told the story, that story was put together really on the fly. They used a bit of cheap racist heat to get it.
Mustafa Ali?
That was the plan.
I don't know if he was ever going to win.
You had to say Kevin Owens.
I thought, it felt like they were setting up Kevin Owens, Daniel Bryan, but then the rumour going around was that Mustafa Ali was lined up for the spot. Then he got injured. But yeah, look, they worked on the fly. Got a great moment. Kofi had his run in the sun. Mustafa Ali, he's another interesting one in terms of a wrestler he's got some really shit storylines, and he's been given some on paper potentially good storylines like Retribution, I will say, which on paper
could have been class.
It could have been fantastic. It could have been. They could have done everything right that they did wrong with the Nexus. They could have
the thing with the
second that they
Retribution
named
thing,
him T-Bar and Slapjack.
Oh yeah,
they were dead on arrival with the names and the costumes.
Yeah,
if those two things, the names and the costumes, had been different, Mustafa Ali led Antifa type thing. Could have been
what
class.
A baller idea on paper,
on paper,
and especially during the
Thunderdome era,
you could have done so much.
You could have done something so interesting with. You could have made a story out of the environment that they're all locked into. You could have done fucking WWE like a fucking John Carpenter movie for fucking
Thunderdome.
10 months, or like an actual Thunderdome.
They all appear Antifa faces appear on the screens,
and lean into the cinematic match aspect of that. It's like a building under siege. Vince McMahon does the constant, we make movies, but I was like, yeah, well, you're all locked into a fucking literal studio for a long time. How about you make a movie out of it? Episodic, well thought out storytelling, pay it off for months and months and months, and actually make this empty arena shit mean something. It was just all it was a random bollocks.
Mustafa Ali talk has brought me to 2 different points, but I want to go back on this episodic cinematic kind of thing that you spoke about, because previously we had stated having guys audition, say, for particular characters.
Gimmicks that are...
But can wrestling be done in a way that, like Lucha Underground, that there's a cinematic aspect to it, but you start out with, say, 16 characters, and you write episodic wrestling based on these 16 characters.
For 3 months.
And then you get wrestlers to fill your characters.
Oh,
not them coming in with gimmicks. Say you have a edgelord or dark lord kind of fucking guy, right? And then you're going to have your patriot, and then you're going to have your this, and then you're going to have your that. And you write episodic wrestling based on these characters and put the wrestlers into them.
I don't know.
Shane, congratulations, Shane. You've just invented Glow.
Yeah, there we go. Nice one.
I think the issue with that
I'm going to get Brie Larson in coming down into my...
Oh, Alison Brie.
Alison Brie,
Who's
big fan. Brie Larson is
Captain Marvel.
The Room.
Too much
Marvel.
cheese.
Okay. You went to Captain Marvel, I went to The Room. This goes back to our conversation last week on storytelling.
I'm like a bright and glittering, colourful superhero, and a woman been locked in a room, been abused, and held away from the world.
There's too many actors named after cheese.
Yes,
That's
big fan of Alison Brie as well.
Brie Bella.
Brie.
Okay, so
I think two issues with that is, one is you cannot pivot then to, oh shit, Johnny Martz is after getting over massively, but we have him written for the next 7 weeks to be whatever.
Yeah,
you know,
you can't work on the fly, and I think,
but that's interesting to me, though, right? Like,
yeah, but also you want to give yourself room. I think it was like that Paul Heyman speech thing where he said something. I'm gonna paraphrase the fuck out of it now, but like to the effect of like, never at any other time has there been so many main eventers or so many wrestlers breaking through into the main event scene, and I think that's because, you know, instead of like putting all your fucking eggs in one pot, like Triple H has a lot of pots and they're all simmering away at different times. Like, and things are
someone can break out with one.
Someone can break out. And also for that thing, when you talk about like the best way, I think, to treat a lot of your new wrestlers, AEW has always done it, I think, really well. Not really well, but mostly well. And WWE is starting to do it, is they get a guy with potential who he's a little bit untethered. They're not really sure what to do with him. Put him in with a faction or associate him with an act. Yeah. And
do you think that's a good thing that AEW do?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it gives...
How many fucking factions have Hobbs been in?
But again, yeah, agreed.
Wardlow. How many factions is Wardlow?
No, Wardlow, I think, is actually a really good example based on his first 2 or 3 years. Yeah, like... I think Wardlow at the start was good with that stuff. But him back in the faction, they're still in the middle of the storyline. They're obviously going to go somewhere with it. I wouldn't say it's a complete wash with him, but I'd use someone like Nick Wayne as an example of like someone who you're like, he doesn't need to be heavily featured at the moment. I haven't really figured him out, but give him a good mentor. Give him someone like Christian and work within the stable for a while when you're getting your reps, similar to what JD McDonough is doing in Judgment Day, similar to what Solo was doing in the Bloodline.
Yeah, but
like that's a really good way to introduce characters, not overtax them, not overexpose them, and have them actually working with a bunch of veterans week in, week out.
JD leaves and he joins the Alpha Academy, and then he leaves and he joins the Bloodline. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we're talking about the initial introduction, though.
That's what, like, how many people was Andrade partnered with when he was in AEW?
Too many.
Was he with Matt Hardy at one stage as well?
Yeah, the Hardy Andrade family office.
It was a mess. It was a merger. It was a conglomeration.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous stuff.
Like,
remember the Trustbusters and
Trustbusters are up there with worse factions.
But what I'm saying is, with the if you wrote wrestling in the same way that is there not a scope to write wrestling in the same way that you write television nowadays?
Or I think about this a lot in terms of.
Are you just thinking like wrestling has to be in front of a live audience?
But also,
you have to go what they
I think this is a slightly moot point, Shane, and I'm going to undercut you there a bit. But I think it is happening. We're getting it. For the first time in 20 years, we're getting it. We got 2 major mainstream US promotions that are doing that type of storytelling, the type of storytelling that the Japanese have been
for decades.
Doing for decades. A thing that, like, for the most part, left American wrestling in the 1980s, and we're getting it back, and it feels good. So I'm happy with how things are in that regard.
I think where we're at the moment is a balance between what you're saying and what the way wrestling is traditionally, or not traditionally, under Vince had been done. Like, they're not flat out writing like, here's our 6-month script. These are the characters we're using. We're going to do this for 6 months. But what they're doing is, both companies, we have a fairly solid general plan of where we're going to be by WrestleMania, by All In, whatever.
100%.
And in between, we're going to have to make some chopping and changing to get where we want to go.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, the point I'm trying to get at, is there room? I'm not saying WWE should change, or I'm not saying AEW. Is there room for a promotion?
Are you trying to start your own promotion again?
Yeah. But is there room for a promotion that incorporates a television style in terms of, this is my 10 episode arc. These are all the beats that I want to hit over the 10 episodes, and then you can start delving into serious adult topics like you do in television, and that you can't for some reason do in professional wrestling. if you get me.
Is there room for
Right.
the mainstream? I don't know.
Like, you're almost writing a TV show, but it just happens to be about
Yeah,
wrestling.
but also I think wrestling is a slightly different art form than a lot of others in like when they say the US entertainment industry is like a bit of a like Democratic Party, and it always gets kind of associated with the actors, the Hollywood elite and all that.
The more left leaning.
The more left leaning.
He's in the Hollywood elite, actually.
More left leaning, whereas like wrestling, in particular WWE's version of it, is like
more right-leaning.
it's a Republican fucking and I think that
For
feeds
years,
into
it was a Republican vehicle for.
It was. I mean, so like, and Vince is famously a Republican donor. His wife works for the party.
Yeah.
So it's a little right leaning in that. Like when you see these portrayals,
Did you
over
say white leaning?
White leaning.
You did.
It is. It is
Hulk Hogan.
definitely white leaning. But then that's why you don't end up with a black champion for the longest of time. You don't end up with women being featured in any kind of prominent way for decades.
I was listening to Becky's book, and
then
I was
you
like shocked by what they were told.
It's shocking. But imagine saying that now. Like if you want to work here, you're going to need to get breast implants. You're going to literally need to change your body. It's so fucked. And then on top of that, you got the xenophobic portrayals of certain characters. No nuance and subtlety in storytelling. And also like,
but like you look at say Tropic Thunder, right? There's some very fucking. I know it's a comedy or whatever, but like when they go into the jungle, and actually that's probably not a great one because of Robert Downey Jr. and stuff. But at the time, that seemed funny. I don't know if it was
still controversial at the time, but
they go into the jungle, and there's Vietnamese stereotypes there with not a lot of nuance or anything like that, But that's just entertainment. So can you not just do these stereotypes and then allow it to develop, or do you flat out just say no?
I think as well with the Cambodian dudes in the jungle, they kind of subverted that stereotype
because they're into theatre,
doing the theatre with the Simple Jack character and obsessed with this movie of the Simpleton. Like they played with it a little bit. Whereas like. I suppose WWE did Simple Jack with Eugene, didn't they?
Eugene was one I was going to bring up, but that's also that for me is an example of like the right performer.
Yes,
on paper, potentially good gimmick if done right. Vince McMahon books it.
I know.
So you have this like you got a fantastic character like Nick a wrestler like Nick Dinsmore, and then you've got the gimmick of Eugene, which was based on a real life. Dude who had special needs. He used to come to
it was someone's son, wasn't it?
It was some staff member's son, and his name was Eugene. But he used to come to every show. And then I think the idea was to do this kind of like Rain Man savant character, which is really a fantastic gimmick. Like this idea of this autistic character who's a wrestling genius and has trained himself, who's maybe not like
actually
who's not great socially.
It's Bryan Danielson.
It is actually Bryan Danielson in real life. But like to do a gimmick like that and actually have it be a really positive portrayal. But then it was just
and Nick becomes the butt of a joke.
And Nick Dinsmore said this himself. He was like, but he was constantly like, this is what I told him, but he was constantly like he was trying to do something that was a bit subtle and well considered within that, and it's, as I said, potentially a good gimmick on paper. But then you got people like Vince McMahon who's telling him to like spaz it up,
ham it up,
and
or spaz it up.
Do these, well, that was what he was told. That's what he was told, and he was trying to do something a little bit better with that, and then he just ends up with this completely offensive and misrepresentative character who is. It's just low-hanging fruit, and ultimately I don't think anybody who was autistic or anybody who had any kind of like learning disabilities or anything would look at that character necessarily and be like, oh yeah, that's me.
At the exact same time they're running Muhammad Hassan, which is just the exact same as what you said. I think a really good premise to play on prejudice,
fears at the time,
and then he jumped the shark.
I know. Here's the thing with Hassan is I don't think he jumped the shark, and I think that
the fucking when they were choking.
Sorry. In terms of the actual, in terms of the piano wire, that in itself as a booking decision, and something that was insanely controversial. and was the end of that character. In fact,
End of him as a wrestler. Which is
end of him as a wrestler. But what I will say,
100% Italian, by the way.
Yeah, Italian.
yeah, the guy's name is Mark Copani. He's a high school principal now, I think, in like
Nice.
New York.
Good job.
But like, you know, a good dude, and he actually like it seemed like he, unlike a lot of people in that era, he was welcomed to the dressing room. He was a hard worker. You know, in your first couple of months, but the fact that if you're joining the WWE in 2005, in your first couple of months and you're fresh and you were getting to work with Hogan,
You're in your first match is
Undertaker.
Lawler.
you get to work with Michaels
First match is Lawler. Hogan, Michaels,
and then Undertaker.
and Undertaker.
So that guy was really well regarded and obviously was given a good push, which he stood up to. What I will say about Muhammad Hassan, yeah, distasteful maybe, but at the very least with the character, what you were doing was, it was a kind of inversion of the Middle Eastern heel trope, in that
It wasn't Team America.
it wasn't him going, oh, I hate America. It was more going, hey, because of the shit
America
that's going
hates
on
me.
right now in the culture, post 9/11 culture in America, that I am now discriminated against.
Is it
and now
okay?
I'm hated on.
Is it okay? Because I was watching that with one of the editors at the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. Big shout out to David. But when Muhammad Hassan mentioned 9/11, he goes, but since 9/11, and he's did that in pretty much all his promos. The first time he said it, you went, ah. What's he mentioning that for?
maybe-
And you're like, well, you mentioned 9/11 and other.
I don't think I don't think that's cheap heat, because that you're using an event that's historical, that has happened, and it's rooted in the experience of his character. And also, like, if you're Arab American, that's the experience of a lot of Arab Americans at that time.
And Sikh Americans who had nothing to do with.
Exactly,
You know,
yeah.
yeah,
People
yeah.
were getting discriminated against because
That's
of,
why
because of
Davari
their
was
skin
in
color
there as well,
and,
wasn't it?
yeah, and Davari too. And he's going, hey, like, I'm not a monster. It's like, you're painting me as a monster. So if that's what you want to do, I'm going to act like this. Which is really good, kind of solid heel logic. But where it got thorny with that character was, again, Vince McMahon is doing a gimmick about that's where real life things are happening and people are actually being killed, and then you're coming out with like all the martyrs, like effectively Muhammad Hassan for some reason is running a stable of suicide bombers or fucking terrorists.
Right.
Well,
Like,
that
dressed
never really
in
got.
red,
To be fair, that never got to play out because of the.
Yeah, but that
London
in
bombs,
itself,
yeah.
and it's very typical with like a lot of these characters, like Eugene again as an example, where you're starting off and you're going, oh yeah, they might have a handle on this, and the performer knows what they're doing, and this is good, and then Vince just gives them some absolutely useless angle that completely rubbishes the character. And with Hassan, like the implication, like him just being a bad man is enough, but then you go into. And it can be implied that maybe he has certain, sympathies and
without being
overt.
and
And then you get to the point you literally drive that fucking train into a wall by going, "Hey, he's got a fucking cell of terrorists."
Yeah,
and you're
and
going to come down. They're going to choke the Undertaker with fucking piano wire,
And then did they carry off Davari like a martyr?
like a martyr,
Like,
or maybe the Undertaker like a martyr. So it's going, oh yeah. So you've gone from like just a disillusioned Arab American heel with sound internal logic,
and
at least for
actually
him,
legitimate concerns.
yeah, and who also reflects a worldview of a lot
Yes.
of people, and it's current, it's topical,
Yeah.
it's actually and you can do really good things when you turn in babyface down the line then as well. There's a lot of positive things you can do.
So,
But then you just
what if they did that with Ilya Dragunov? No.
well, this is the fucking thing. I mean, like, I don't know to what extent Vince's fingers went there, but like to have a dude who's just straight up Russian, he's just a Russian guy. And he's an amazing wrestler. And he hasn't been given some weird kind of Cossack Bolshevik fucking gimmick, which, like in the 80s and 90s, because of Cold War concerns.
He would have been 100%.
A Bolshevik.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, Rusev, Miro, he's not even fucking Russian, and he got stereotypical Russian
He's
gimmick.
from Bulgaria.
Dude, just from Bulgaria. It's like, he's the first ever, like,
And his
WWE wrestler from Bulgaria. Let just that be his gimmick. Let him do some Bulgarian shit.
And he has Bulgaria tattooed on him as the shape of the country.
His wife is American and she's got a Russian accent on
His
TV, like.
ex-wife, his ex-hot flexible ex.
Well, she's not flexible anymore?
Is ex-flexible or ex-wife?
No, his
Still flexible ex-wife.
Ex-wife.
We should ask Damien Priest.
What?
Yeah, apparently that's the thing.
Oh, scandal. What? Damien Priest
and Lana. Or CJ Perry. Priest. CJ Priest.
CJ Priest.
Apparently that's the thing. The
Controversial.
internet has said that. Maybe
Controversial storyline to
That
come.
is a controversial
There we go.
storyline.
Well, like I really liked Right, maybe Edge should have won it, but I liked the fact that they played into the real life controversy of Edge and Matt.
So I think
And that's what we said the AEW should do.
But also, this AEW are doing at the moment with the Young Bucks and Jack Perry and their new stable. They are.
They had their chance. Now Punk is gone. Now they're going to play in their little sandbox.
I know. Yeah, that's valid. But also, like, at least it's a thing that's happening that references real world events and things that have happened to those people. So, like, the whole idea of, like, love triangles been utilized in wrestling, and Matt Hardy, Edge, Lita, that's a really good one.
Chris Benoit, Nancy,
Kevin Sullivan, Jeff Jarrett, Karen Angle, and Kurt Angle.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's been done, and it's been done.
Stop mentioning
excellently.
You mentioned love triangles.
Yeah, but I didn't mention. I talked about him earlier without even saying his name.
Kevin Sullivan.
Just because you didn't say it last week because John wasn't. Now you want to be cool in front of John.
Yeah, I'm showing off. Sorry.
Edgelord here over here.
I just want to be cool in front of my friends.
Speaking of edgelords, Edge, well, the difference is, like, Kevin Sullivan actually booked his own divorce. This was a real life thing that they responded to. But I do think that, like, the joy of using real life things in wrestling is actually, most of it just comes from the real lives of the wrestlers themselves.
Chris Adams did it with Steve Austin as well.
Yeah, like Chris Adams did it with Steve Austin too. Like,
is that a thing though? That's like, do we like those storylines because
we're marks,
or like, do those storylines ever actually like filter out into the mainstream?
But even if they don't, they filter out in the storyline.
But isn't that, like, that's for me, like, one of the juiciest aspects of wrestling? I think when I know, like, or I've heard, like, these people have beef in real life. This incident happened. These are the various real life problems.
When Booker and Batista went up against each other after Booker
they did, yeah. But that's the joy of pro wrestling, that they filter it into a feud or an angle, or it's set up for a big match, and you're going, oh god, like, now they're weaving the real stuff with the
97,
and I don't know 97 by heart, and I'm like, I don't know what's real and what's fake. Like, AEW have tried to do that, and MJF particularly does that an awful lot, and there's a lot of wrestlers that do. But that's the joy.
Every now and again, you get a Hawk and Scott Hall substance abuse storyline angle where they're bleeding real life into that, but that's deemed crass.
Again, though, there's I hate to.
It depends on how it's done.
Like, if Ollie Reed played a fucking alcoholic in a movie, you wouldn't be like, oh, why are they making him play an alcoholic?
Like, if you look at Nick Nolte and Warrior, like, do you see Warrior there?
Yeah.
He plays the dad who
Hardy's just walking around with his traps
up to his.
Like, we all have traps if we just walk around like that all the time. And I love Tom Hardy. I love Tom Hardy.
But also, it does, like,
actually, his brother once told me I look like.
You do have an air of him. You do have an air of Hardy about you. Yeah.
I'll take that. Tell him thanks from me.
You said Jeff Hardy and the CM Punk and bleeding the Jeff Hardy substance abuse.
That was great.
I
was never a fan. Like, I was never actually a fan of Jeff Hardy as a wrestler. Like, when he was doing his big singles push, I was kind of like, I don't really want to see him in big singles matches. But it was that storyline in particular where I was like, all right, I'm on board here.
Yeah, and I think, like, that's the joy of pro wrestling when they do that well. And, like, that's a very different thing, using real life controversies and real life incidents, and particularly ones that are actually fucking relevant to the wrestlers themselves, rather than be like
a storyline that,
hey, like, this horrible thing is gonna, like, like, it wouldn't be like, even with the world now at the moment, you'd imagine that, like, not even 1995 Vince, but like 2022 Vince, he'd be looking at, like, Ukraine and Russia, and he'd try and get something in on that, and Israel Palestine, he'd try and get something in on that, and he's done various riffs on that. But, like, I think, because of how corporate they've become, he's probably been talked out of it a lot more. They got sponsors. You can't. It's the thing. It's just like, and it's also the representation. And going back to, like, representation
and their Saudi deal as well,
and the Saudi deal, yeah,
and their kids.
They're
and
also just
the
culture has changed fucking massively, and that brings me back to, like, LGBT characters, and then using Goldust as an example. Like, some of the stuff Goldust had to do was bad, but, like, for the most part, it was a good performer taking a questionable gimmick, potentially really good gimmick, and doing really interesting things with it and trying to subvert what that was. And it was more about, like, obviously there's a degree of homophobia, but a lot of Goldust, it was about mind games, it was about psychological warfare, it was a kind of shape-shifting character. It worked really, really well. And then a couple of years down the line, you got, like, in quick succession, you get Rico, who was a great performer, but, like,
Chuck and Billy,
and you have these horrible representations of, like, LGBT people in wrestling that are, like, you hear in the commentary, it's like, oh, like, wrestlers constantly freaking out because they've been touched by a gay wrestler.
Yeah, and when the rest of the time they're just sweating on top of each other, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
And then at the payoff to Billy and Chuck is like, oh no, we're not.
Right. They had a chance to do something again, really positive, and they could have got like because that was a hot act for a while, but no, they fucked it again. And I
See, like that can work. Like you've seen it with the Golden Lovers in Japan, and it was the way they did it. Like they weren't an overtly bisexual or homosexual storyline, but there was like
it's implied
tidbits there and implications all along, and it never became the focus of the pairing.
Yeah, that's not what they're about.
Yes,
Yeah.
like they were still a wrestling tag team.
Yeah.
instead of like we're going to do a wedding ceremony on TV.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, because it's all to do with presentation.
And the storyline was made about it, you know what I mean? And then you get distasteful stuff, like whatever about using a real life storyline. But then when people are like cast, you know, like you're saying, Shane, like in parts because
That's around the time of I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, though, right? That movie.
I don't know.
I don't know if it was.
I think that came later, did it?
It's on Billy and Chuck were probably ahead of the curve there. I think maybe a
I
little
think
bit.
were they like 2001 too?
No.
They were
2003.
No, they were 2002, 2, 3, probably maybe 4.
When did 3 Minute Warning came? That would have been when Eric Bischoff was there, so that would have been 2003.
2003 or 4.
Then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but going back to the casting as well, like I mean, they did that with, you know, all the bad Vince McMahon romance angles, but they did it with like Miro and Lana and Bobby Lashley.
Bobby Lashley, like that.
You know,
that story.
You know, that was just
That's Vince's search history.
nobody, and that's Vince's search history. Like, yeah,
we watched Vince's
Yeah,
search
yeah,
history.
but like
straight
you
up.
know, you same with the dog food on Roman Reigns.
Yeah, God,
you know.
almighty.
But we were watching real life come to our screens right there.
Yeah.
Bully
Yeah,
Ray,
yeah.
he had something really interesting. Bubba Ray Dudley, when he made his return to WWE in 2015, he said he wanted to bring his Bully Ray character and wanted to just be a bully to people. And then eventually learn the errors of his ways over the course of a year and become an advocate for anti-bullying. He was told that they couldn't do that because of the Be a Star campaign. But that was the whole purpose of him becoming bully. So, like, I always found that, I was like, that would have been really cool just to give Bully Ray something.
That's a great idea for a storyline.
It is
Yeah.
a great idea.
But
And
they
I
couldn't.
think
Why wouldn't, like, why could you do that somewhere else? I know they have the campaign of Be a Star, but why can't
that play into it? The bully gets beaten and changes his ways.
why can't you differentiate between the character and the actual, say, human for Be a Star? Because you can have Angelina Jolie play a villain in a movie, but also be an advocate for, you know,
a million things.
yeah, advocate for adoption or, yeah.
Like I think as well.
Why are they adoption people that, or whoever she fucking does work for? I don't know. Just 'cause she's
has
adopted
wrestling worked itself into a shoot in terms of the kayfabe?
That's
aspect
essentially
of it?
what
Yeah.
I'm trying to get at, and that's essentially the crux of the whole thing.
Like,
Yeah, but I think
This whole conversation.
I think it's so necessary to like maintain that as much as possible.
100%, yeah.
You know, and I think, but now we're, you know, in the internet age, and particularly like in the last like fucking 10, 15 years as well, it's like everyone is so well informed. Like I said, it's like, you know, just this idea of neo kayfabe where they're constantly trying to blur it. But I think it's
But like we
what
spoke
keeps
last
us.
week as well about like Adam Cole being a heel on TV and that being a disconnect with when you turn on his Twitch stream and he's the nicest guy in the world. Like it gets to that point where they're clearly playing a character on TV.
Yeah, I don't
we
like
do
that.
check out.
I'm not mad on that. So I like.
Yeah, but why do we make that distinction? Why can you look at a villain in a TV show?
And yeah, I
and
think it's because we don't want our wrestlers
your
to
man
be
that played
characters.
Joffrey in Lord of the Rings, who also has
Game
a
of
wrestling
Thrones.
connection. Fucking Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Joffrey
did you
in Game
say?
of Thrones.
Jack Leeson.
Jack Leeson. He has a connection with wrestling. He was at like Fight Factory there a while ago.
Oh, really?
But he was in Kilkenny during the Cat Laughs. He was
Yeah,
dressed
yeah.
as a cat and stuff, and you know he's meant to be a really nice guy.
Yeah, lovely dude.
Met him
Lovely
once,
dude.
yeah.
But he was the
Seemed
biggest
like a nice dude.
prick in the world in fucking Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
I'd like to see Game of
Thrones.
Tron with Jeff Bridges and Game of Thrones in Tron. That'd be cool.
But like,
that's just like a dude is good at being bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so,
like loads of wrestlers are good at being bad.
so why can't we?
Because
just
we
accept
still
that?
we still expect a level of kayfabe, I think, you know.
We
That's
still
on
do.
us then.
But
That's an us problem.
But also, like, I think that's where wrestling gets really interesting as kind of like a morality play, because like you can say that about Adam Cole or whatever, but like at least like there's a lot more nuance in top level wrestling now. AEW really reintroduced that concept. WWE also do. It's like someone could do bad things and not be
A bad guy.
Based on
Well, Stone Cold Steve Austin, like.
yeah, I mean, yeah, like ultimate kind of a breakthrough anti-hero kind of character. But like,
why can't we just like the show that we're given? As opposed to...
all right, Vince, steady on.
No, but like, why can't we? Like, I'm not saying how we should enjoy it, but like, why? And we all like looking at tidbits and stuff in behind. We all
Well,
go
why
on to
do we need to
IMDb
know
and look at the
everything else?
fucking trivia after we've watched the movie, going, "Oh my god, I can't believe he had a toe infection when he was shooting that scene. That's amazing." But
Toe
maybe
infections are a serious
maybe that's
thing.
just me.
Yeah, man.
But why can't we
Christ.
just like go right? This is the story that's being presented on a Monday night, a Wednesday night, a Friday night. No one watches Collision, so this is the story that has been presented.
I watched it live.
Let's just enjoy this thing that we're given instead of and all the fucking shit that comes with it. And
because three of us are sitting here talking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also crucially
fucking
is like
Rex, we've ruined it for ourselves.
Yeah.
crucially, like wrestling is like as I said in the last couple of years, it has benefited more from like actually, you know, during the streaming boom that we've had over the last 10 years. There's a lot of people, a lot of wrestlers as well, who were saying like, you know, but wrestling needs to be more like Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy and like myriad shows that are popular. And it's kind of started to do that now in the last, like, particularly since the advent of AEW. So I feel like we're kind of in a good space with it. But crucially, like, wrestling it's a TV show, but it's not that type
So
of TV.
much more.
It's still also an athletic spectacle. It's
And
a
it's
performance art.
as a
It's
sport.
theater.
Not saying that we need it.
It's a
Not
live
saying-
show.
Not saying that we need it. Not saying that we want it. But could you have Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka, the equivalent of that now, where Piper is giving an Islander bananas,
Yeah.
saying climb up the tree, monkey boy. He's giving him pineapples and cracks him in the head with a coconut. Can you have that in wrestling in
Seriously,
2024?
I think you can, and I think if it's logical for the character,
When Juice did that
feel
to
that.
MJF with the roll of quarters,
Yeah.
there was a lot of anti-Semitism been spouted out about that.
yeah.
And there was controversy about that. But for the character of Juice to do that to a Jewish man,
But that makes sense. But what you're talking about has happened there as well is that, you know, there's a reported spike in anti-Semitic crime happening in the US. So to do something like that at a time, particularly, you know, when it was happening, like that, it just seems like it's a little bit too soon. Like, maybe don't do that right now, guys.
say the equivalent of EastEnders and Coronation Street over there, and they have an angle where there's anti-Semitism. Someone experiences it.
Yeah, I think
Days of our lives.
Days
but-
of our
but-
life. But is it okay to do it in that context?
I think they
Like, why-
also
No,
get
but-
criticised for being crass as well, though.
yeah,
We're not in the soap mark bubble.
we should do a
we're not
we should do a soap
really, but
podcast.
like, maybe they should. Maybe they should.
What's the first great piece of movie or TV that is heavily influenced by 9/11?
South Park.
To come like afterwards, like that,
But that's also immediately responding to that.
that
Yeah,
deals
it's goes-
with like the fallout of 9/11.
Oliver Stone did World Trade Center, which I think was maybe the first feature film that was really
I guess so,
specifically.
yeah.
But I'm not sure.
93.
United 93 was around the same time. But that was like that's still a
They're
couple.
6-7 years later.
They're a couple of years removed.
Homeland's a decade
Yeah.
removed. Like, it takes time to digest, and
Well, they take time to make as well.
they do. But like Homeland's the whole 10 years.
I'm pretty certain that there was a 9/11 movie.
I just
There was a Titanic movie 30 days after the Titanic sunk.
what in 19 fucking
Crass
12?
bastards.
Yeah.
Those crass bastards.
Fictional one. And they're just doing a reenactment, Shane. Leave them off. Like,
There's a proper fucking Titanic movie.
I'm gonna watch that. Definitely gonna watch
Yeah,
that.
well, it's too soon.
you said same
But
with
like,
fucking
you know,
crime.
our
like,
comedians talking about
A lot of them
Stuff on
gets
stage.
leveled with the same things as wrestling does.
I think the key word here that we're looking for, because like I don't see a problem with a lot, like wrestling has controversial angles. I think the problem always comes down to, is this an event that's happening right now in which people are being hurt or killed, and are we the key word I think is exploiting this.
or profiteering.
Right.
Profiteering off people's pain that right now, people's misery, people's fucking debt.
I think a lot of it as well is when it's so reactive like that and happening at that time, like what John's saying is, are we exploiting or profiteering off something right now?
Everything is.
It can't be nuanced or considered because
Everything
it's
is
too soon.
exploitative then when you think about it. Everything.
I think if you deal with
an
something-
interview with a serial killer on the news, that's exploitative.
100%.
Everything.
Yeah, that's a ratings
so
grab.
you don't get.
You're
you don't-
hot-shotting.
You don't get
You're
content.
hot-shotting the serial killer.
You don't
angle.
get content anymore. All you're going to get is people recreating fucking dances on TikTok. If you don't,
I don't think you
don't-
get art anymore. You just get content. Everything is content. Like, it's filler.
I think like I do feel like this is kind of a moot point because wrestling has just been doing that stuff, I think, particularly well for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Probably for the first time in about 40 years. Like and I think like we're slightly more grizzled fans, but like we've been around a long time and we've seen so much shit wrestling, and to see the quality of like mainstream wrestling that we get now
the
in
best
comparison
it's
to what
been.
we've gotten all of our lives so far.
It's the
Well,
best.
if you're a teenage fan right now just getting
unbelievable.
into it, you must be having a fucking blast.
Like it's better than, if for me, the Monday Night War period, because there was so much trash during that. Like the top level of
Yeah,
companies
but also
was great.
now the thing with that is like that the Monday Night War period is fucking lower. It's part of the lower. It's part of like The Rock's return, Sting's run in AEW, Jericho's run. So like we're the first generation, well, maybe not the first generation, but worldwide certainly, that you would have grown up with a particular cast of characters 30 years ago.
and we're still getting
And you're
the
still
payoffs
seeing
of that
them,
now.
still seeing payoffs and integration, and that's where it should
Ric
have been.
Flair having
all
a
this
heart
time.
attack in his retirement match. Like
But-
you couldn't book that any
But
better.
that's the thing. So like you're seeing all the older characters that you know and that are established, and they're also still doing kind of like new things and also plugging into like
now storylines.
I can't think Aaron Anderson and Cody Rhodes, which was just fantastic. Like
Yeah.
Tully Blanchard as well with FTR.
FTR.
Like you're just seeing what like such good structure, and it's reaching back into fucking history,
And
it's utilizing it.
they're utilizing their own history without having to utilize what's going on
in
the outside. Right?
Yeah.
As I said, you can still
Sting
do
and
it.
Darby Allin, we mentioned that last week, has been one of the AEW successes.
Yeah.
It's like you're using the history of Sting
Yeah.
to promote Darby Allin
Like
and so on.
with the exception of say Matt Caster and his raps, like AEW don't really mention the outside world or what's happening, do they? Either do WWE now.
No, I mean AEW.
Which is a good thing. They're creating their own.
I think again, talk about working on the fly, but AEW, when the pandemic happened, they were just like, "This is exactly what's going on," and like,
the Cody interview the first night in the
Yeah.
stage in
Now,
Daily's
like,
Place. No, it wasn't Daily's Place. It was the Nightmare Factory, wasn't it?
yeah, it was
The first
Nightmare
one.
Factory
Yeah.
for the first
Cody
while, and
gave
then they
that
went to Daly's.
speech in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, so that was AEW utilizing a real life event, making sure that everybody knew watching it that this was going to be part of the presentation and part of their world of wrestling,
And handled
from
it
then
very
on.
well.
But they weren't doing fucking gimmicks about like lads. Oh, this lad is sneezing on a lad. And it's like, oh, he's down, fucking
That
coughing.
would have been great. Just one wrestler is going
You know,
around giving
he's not
every-
like, oh Jesus, you know what I mean? Like fucking,
He's a
like
big-
Sean Spears' hands are filthy. Like he's been fucking.
You have a big match at WrestleMania and you don't
someone
want to
going
defend your title.
Licking coffee cups backstage.
Exactly. So it's taking the real world thing, it's utilizing it, it's making a part of the presentation, but it's also not like, again, making light of like fucking people who are suffering at the time, fucking victims, people who are sick, frontline workers, all of that. It's
I do think there's
done respectfully.
like the presentation of wrestling will say, since AEW, but also since Triple H has come in, there's just like a more mature presentation happening.
yeah,
you
but
don't
the-
feel
the-
embarrassed to show your fucking friends.
But you
anything you're watching.
can also have mature themes while dealing with some serious topics. Like, but that's the whole point. Well, serious. It's not.
Seamus called Gunter basically Hitler there on Twitter last
He
week.
effectively did.
And took it down.
You look at the presentation of Imperium as a stable as opposed to like what that stable would have been under. Well, it was under Vince a little
But
bit,
30 years ago,
but like
25 years ago.
Yeah, even I would have even said 10 years ago.
Like they would have been flat out Nazis. Like.
They're like
they
balls to the fucking wall.
Wasn't Heiderreich going to be a Nazi?
Yeah, I think that was the plan.
Like a frozen Nazi stormtrooper.
Yeah, Vince just got up
So
and
they're-
left the meeting or something.
I'm actually surprised he got up and left because that is a Vince McMahon gimmick.
Yeah, if I've ever seen one.
He's
No,
back
he-
from the ice.
But like-
He's
like-
back from the Ice King.
There's certain undertones with
Imperium.
Like even, but Walter was
Ringkampf.
Ringkampf,
Yeah.
the ring general, the big long
The
jacket.
long jacket, the presentation, the music.
The music.
The Austrian German.
It's vaguely like it is vaguely. But they've always utilized that. They haven't exploited it, but they're taking what they're doing.
Not exploited or crass.
It's not because
naming him after Gunther Stark, a fucking an actual Nazi.
And I think Ludwig Kaiser's like. Is the first name they gave him after Marcel Bartel was literally a Nazi commander.
Yeah, they
had to soften it. But what I will say about utilizing that type of gimmick is that they've taken like one small sliver of what we would regard like Nazi kind of an idea or iconography. And they're going, these guys think they're better than everyone and that their ring is pure.
Yeah.
But it's which is so different than a version of that, where it's like we're going to round everyone up who's not us, and ship them off,
because that's what it would have been 15.
Yeah. Whereas now it's kind of you talk about cultural stereotypes, but you might say about the Germans that people go, like the Germans kind of have they have high standards, they're a bit austere, they have very high standards,
there's an arrogance,
and maybe an arrogance.
Can't crack a joke.
Who remember La Resistance?
Sorry, I just
La Resistance, like that was the most like, France aren't joining America in the Iraq War. We are going to like create the most ridiculous French characters
out of American Canadians.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do they do? All they do is just to fucking they wave flags and do a funny little dance. French stickler.
That was class.
But again, like what we got now is that you do
René Dupree do that in OTT, and that got the biggest pop at night. The French stickler.
Anyway, I do think that with good booking that you can take characters that are effectively would be considered stereotypes and storylines that could employ those stereotypes in a way
good booking, but also good performers.
Yeah.
Can you have a Kamala nowadays?
No, you can't have a Kamala.
Nor should we have a
Kamala.
I like Kamala.
But this is the thing, like
as a kid though, I was a kid.
But it's unfortunate. But like, I don't think Kamala would make. Like, I don't think he would make the money.
He had a technical wrestling match in 2006 with Danielson and Ring of Honor.
Oh, he did. Kamala and Bryan Danielson. Yeah.
Class.
Like it was.
Remember when Kamala and like Vader came back to help? No, it was Vader and Goldust.
It was Vader and Goldust
against Batista.
Yeah, he's brought back. He was helping the coach. It was, I think, it could have been a Taboo Tuesday or something. Like that.
It was a pure Scotch job as well.
Kamala, look, it's really interesting with Kamala as an example, and to use Gunter as a kind of sideways counterpoint to this as well. But like Jim Hart, most likely, I'm surmising here, but like he most likely cultivated that gimmick because Uganda was in the news a lot in the 70s because of like. During Idi Amin's reign, and he felt like, that's an African country that's got a bit of heat.
Yeah.
So maybe I can do, but he could have done an Idi Amin style character, which would have been way more progressive.
Awesome.
Yeah, which could have been cool.
In the like what I
and maybe here's the thing, maybe he considered it, but ultimately he was like, no, I'm just going to do like a savage. I'm going to do a savage from the jungle, but I'm going to do the best version of it.
What about Umaga?
I don't even know what he was like.
It was a mess. It was
Samoa Joe was doing deadly. They wanted a Samoan wrestler, so they brought in a Samoan Savage.
But this is the thing,
he's a Savage. That's what's so great about Samoa Joe is
he booked any of the stereotypes.
Yeah. He booked every single stereotype to do with Samoan.
I'm not going to eat fish. I'm not going to fucking necklace made of bones.
He did come out for a Bound for Glory doing a Samoan dance one time.
They did try and get him to be more Samoan in TNA for a while and failed miserably.
In 2010, he came out with a machete and he had like.
He had the face tattoo.
Yeah. I thought I thought Rikishi was a really progressive kind of update. Not the fucking the gangbanger one.
Oh jeez.
The gangbanger one is the best one.
No, make a difference, Fatu. But at least it was better for him because he was a great wrestler and a great worker. It was still a vaguely stereotypical character, but at least it was WWE trying to do something different at the time, actually, and use real life things like fucking being a gang.
He wanted Yokozuna in a thong. He never got that, so he put.
But he eventually got
Rikishi. Yeah, he just put him in a thong. He had that thong in his mind.
But then it was such a role back then when Umaga shows up and like Eddie Fatu shows back up. He's 3 minute warning, which again were a progressive gimmick for like a cool gimmick for two Samoan guys.
Gangbangers. That's what they were.
No, but like I thought it was more like fucking seeing them as like mercenaries. Well, street guys, but like mercenaries, and like they were just paid to come in and annihilate people. Yeah, maybe it was a little bit gangbanger, but I much would have preferred a gangbanger, fucking very urban take on that character than seeing what he came back as badass and beast as he was, and he was fantastic.
I really liked Umaga.
I loved Umaga, but that's because he was so good in the ring and so believable. But it was again a stereotypical character that was.
He didn't need to be a
savage.
He didn't need to be a savage.
No, to be a badass.
That I'm having though,
Samoa Joe.
going, can you do this character again? Can you do this character again? They're actually characters of different race that thinking that of.
Yeah, it's
Get
never.
me? Yeah,
Well,
it's,
like,
it's never
WWE
like, can
has
you do
this-
the Big Boss Man again? I'm like, yeah, you could do the Big Boss Man again if you wanted to do the Big Boss Man again. But could you do Shelton Benjamin and his mom angle again? And we're like, no, you can't really.
No.
You know what I mean?
Like,
That's,
do you know what? When you think of like Hispanic representation and that, like LAX,
class.
so class.
That's
Yeah.
gangbanging stuff, though.
Yeah, but the way it was done.
Yeah, they're like that's the thing. You can take like it was same to New Day. You can take the stereotypical gimmick you've been
Because
given,
wasn't
but you can
Crime
find
Time
ways to
around
subvert it.
a similar time to LAX.
Yeah,
The
Crime
early
Time.
LAX.
I think Crime Time were like it was again stereotypical gimmick, but those guys really made it work by.
They were great
They were,
performers.
again, it was like the Guerreros doing it. It's like we're
Yeah.
playing stereotypical, effectively thieves.
Yes,
Like
our name is Crime
it
Time.
was Crime Time, but they found ways around that and actually just made it work for a wrestling gimmick without it
Can
seeming
you do a
too.
Santino Morella?
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
Santino.
Why? But that was so offensive. That's actually an offensive character as well.
To
In
Italians?
what way though?
He's not Italian at all.
Well,
You
no,
could
but
get
he's
Muhammad Hassan to do that character.
he's Italian Canadian, and I don't know. I feel like that was a character where it's
Had
like
John Cena.
he's just a
bumbling
silly
idiot.
character. He's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
bumbling
bumbling
idiot.
idiot.
I mean, it'd be different if it was like a French character who was
But,
like,
like, his whole-
fucking Inspector
Baguette.
Clouseau and Ian Baguette and
One of
doing
his
the
gimmicks
pratfalls.
was that he can't pronounce people's names properly.
I'd love to see like an Irish character like that. Why would you have a dumb fucking like cool Irish characters?
Yeah.
We'd never probably.
You know, if somebody was to
We
do
did
it,
have a leprechaun.
if someone
We
was
did
to
have a
do,
leprechaun.
we did the fucking leprechaun.
And Becky Lynch
Fit-
was
Fit Finley, like one of the best technical / brawler wrestlers you're ever going to see, was walking around with a shillelagh.
and
I
Becky
don't even
Lynch.
know what a shillelagh
He's-
is.
Yeah,
look,
I've never
one-
seen a shillelagh.
What's a shillelagh?
A
a
shillelagh.
shillelagh's a walking stick. It's a
How
traditional
fucking
Irish
small
walking
was
stick.
Finley? The shillelagh.
Well, he had a different one. His was more like a club. It wasn't like a walking stick. It was more of a more of a
Becky
club.
Lynch had an Irish dancing gimmick
That
Yeah,
first thing,
just for once.
All I'm just saying is I wouldn't mind a stupid Irishman gimmick.
I won't care.
Personally, he wants to be the stupid Irish
Absolutely.
Yeah.
in WWE.
Absolutely.
Oh, we had Hulk Hogan, sure, the Irish Americans.
We're going to dye his hair red. Would you find that controversial?
No.
Is Becky Lynch dyeing her hair red controversial?
No, she's essentially American now.
This
really.
is the thing. I feel like, well, sometimes with certain stereotypes, you go, yeah, like that is maybe a thing that exists in that culture, a la Imperium, a la maybe you'd say it about some of the Irish characters as well.
Have you seen about Allah?
Not a la, as in the god, but
Allah, as in connected to.
a la. Connected to, ergo. But like you can do the thing that seems vaguely stereotypical, but it's not stereotypical if you find fresh angles on it and subvert it, and there's a bit of nuance around it.
And you get time to do that in television and maybe not so much wrestling.
Well, like it's crazy to me because AEW has 5 televised hours a week. WWE has 7 televised hours a week.
But
They have
collectively,
room
they
for
have-
storytelling.
Collectively, they have 384,000 wrestlers on each roster. There's so many people that work for those companies.
That's not a fact.
That's an exaggeration.
That was a lie. I think.
Calling that.
No,
I feel
it wasn't.
exaggeration.
Give or take.
What's the real number?
Give or take.
Maybe about 200,000.
Oh,
Two-
yeah.
Yeah, on Collision.
A collision alone. I think there's room for controversy in wrestling. I think just don't exploit people who are dying and suffering in the world while you're doing it. I think things
Can you
done
talk about
retrospective-
race?
I think you can absolutely talk about race. And I think you can have really progressive conversations about race if it's booked by someone who isn't a 78-year-old Republican crackpot. And I think that's the type of wrestling we're getting. We're getting more nuance, salty. As Mar said, it's more grounded. It's
And
more
characters
logical.
come back from that. If characters
Are presented as a racist or
are
whatever.
presented as almost like a racist, are they presented?
They need a redemption arc. like, you know.
Presented as I
don't know, I mean-
an abuser.
Well, then you could.
Presented in those kind as a drug addict or a
Jeff Hardy's done it. Hogan hasn't.
Jeff Hardy's come back from it a million times.
Yeah, Hogan to the
Vince
point where it's
McMahon was
now
overtly a sexual abuser. on
Yeah,
air.
coming back
to the
from
point
that.
that is kind of part of his character. I mean, Edge had to make his character for years. He goes, "Yeah, I'm a fucking shitheel, and I sleep with my friends' wives." And he
leaned
literally
into
made
it.
that as part of his
Yeah, he
character,
leaned into
and
it.
then that was worked into it. It's kind of uncomfortable.
Well, like
for
there's
some
a
of these
difference
guys.
between Hogan coming back from racism than a character coming back from doing racism.
Yeah, but Hogan didn't come back and he never acknowledged it, and even if
and he did
even
it
if you
in real
weren't-
life, supposedly off camera.
Well, like in the olden days, you could do that by either changing the gimmick or just never referring to that moment in time. But that's why I really liked about the Bloodline gimmick is that Jay had to earn the trust of everyone that he fucked over while he was in the bloodline. So he's had a bit of a redemption arc. But so maybe there's just no coming back from those, because maybe in a TV show there's no coming back from being a racist. There's no coming back from.
I'm trying to think of
It's not
examples of
harassment.
that
There's no
exact
coming
thing.
back.
Like there's a whole cottage
And I'm not saying
industry
I
of
want to see
Oscar
those things
movies
either.
about it, like where the white guy is marginally racist to his black helper, and then they're besties in the end. You know, look, Remember the Titans, the Green Book. Was it the Green Book?
Yeah, and the wrestling one, that wrestling one as well that dealt with as well. Pile driving Miss Daisy. Remember that?
Great movie.
That was very well.
He fucking lays her out with a pile driver from top of the car at the end.
Yeah.
movie.
JBL fell through it, actually.
Oh, did he?
JBL got choked.
JBL, very overtly, like you talk about overtly racist
He went to the
characters.
border to catch Mexicans.
Yeah, like that was insane.
It has to be added, like Eddie Guerrero worked on that storyline as well. He was part of it.
Yeah,
Eddie Guerrero's mother had a heart attack in the ring.
That was Eddie's idea.
I do feel like that's all. Like it's a lot of heat, but like
I fucking love
in El Paso.
I love JBL.
As a viewer, why would you not want to look at the JBL character, a fucking like big fucking hat wearing
Donald
Texan,
Trump
and just go
before,
like, he's the most racist looking motherfucker I've seen in my life. What's he gonna do?
something racist.
You know what I mean? And then
like
he gets the shit kicked out.
He always gets shit kicked out of him, but always has a little shitty thing to.
But like, I
get
hate
through.
it.
But that's
that,
the
like,
character.
Yeah,
I
that's
hate-
why I loved it.
But see, again, this is where I had issues. Like, who did he drop the title to?
Cena.
The only person in the company whiter than him.
Who's also doing like the most successful rap gimmick in
Yeah.
wrestling history on
He's
a
a white
fucking
guy.
on
He
a white
wasn't doing
guy.
it then, though, was he?
No,
Yeah.
that was over maybe 2 or 3 years at that stage, I think.
Cena.
Cena's rap gimmick.
He started in
he dropped it
2003 and then he dropped it. And he won the world title.
Yeah, he
2005.
dropped it before he won the world title.
Yeah, so
He played it down a little bit, but yeah.
JBL
Cena had
wins the
beaten
world
up-
title in
Cena
a
had beaten up Carlito and Eddie Guerrero en route to that as well, didn't he?
did, yeah.
like JBL drops it or wins the title in a fairly racist storyline angle with Eddie, and then drops it to the whitest guy in the company.
Well, he only-
Like, I would have preferred a payoff of like a Hispanic or black wrestler being the one to dethrone JBL first. He can win it back, then drop it to Cena later.
The only people that were building up, though. And
Rey Mysterio.
Shut up. Rey Mysterio
All right,
as a world champion was terrible.
Here's one for you then, in terms of like
WrestleMania 22.
like he works in a territory that you wouldn't get in mainstream, but like actually a couple of examples of this, but I'm talking about New Jack and
Jesus Christ.
what's the tag team him and Mustafa, the Gangsters.
The Gangsters.
Gangsters,
and
yeah.
So
the
they-
O.J. Simpson stuff.
Yeah, so they rock up at Smoky Mountain in like 1995, and they're
One less
doing
we
this,
got to
like-
worry about.
yeah, and like they got that, and they're talking about the OJ trial, and they say, yeah, one less, or was it 2 less white people we got to worry
Oh,
about?
that,
something
two
like
less
that.
we got to worry about, yeah.
But like their character is like a bunch of black guys going down to like
They were
in-
down there eating chicken, eating watermelon and
doing
stuff.
like they were really but they were like playing a stereotype, but doing it in a particularly in like it was in fucking Kentucky, was it? Where was Smoky Mountain? It was Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville,
Yeah. So like Jim Cornette territory, and he really was like, you know,
loved
you're,
it.
it's like
Of course he loved
your
it.
fans are like a bunch of racists, so like really lean into this, like really like hate on white people, and they did, and it was nuclear. But I don't think that would be.
nuclear. It's pronounced nuclear.
But that's playing on a really controversial, like fucking seismic.
Southern as well,
Massive,
location.
like the OJ trial was everywhere in 1995, and then they're going down south. These two, like, you know,
urban
black guys from
Yeah.
Los Angeles, legit. Like one of them's an actual bounty hunter and a fucking head ball, and they're going in and they're like doing that stuff. And like that was talking about on the button, like exploitative controversy.
But that's class looking back on it
But
now.
also because
Yeah,
it's
there's things
never
you
been
can-
done. It's never been done in
there's
wrestling.
things you can do in territories or independence or whatever that you just cannot do.
ECW with the crucifixion of
crucifixion.
Sandman.
Or what like would it become? Did you feel it was controversial when MJF came out in Tala and he said, "I wish all the rest of you had died in a potato famine"? And like so much heat, but it wasn't like. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, you know, my dad died in the famine.
yeah, well, that's a
I'm not downplaying the traumatic intergenerational effect of the famine, but I'm talking about for modern audiences. It's not like a thing that happened, you know, last year.
Yeah. I was we'll finish up there now soon because you have to go to Bruce Springsteen
It's in like 5 hours, but I have to
Oh,
drink
Native
27
Mary.
pints.
Could a
worth.
Bruce Springsteen gimmick work as for a wrestler? Has anyone done it?
Like the honky tonk man, but Bruce Springsteen impersonator.
Well, like
no.
what? Like a
Hey, little girl, is
working
it daddy
class
home?
Jersey fucking.
Jersey by
boy.
sure,
Who's
son of a plumber.
He kind of describing Moxley.
He pretends.
Yeah, John Moxley is Springsteen.
Moxley probably is the Springsteen.
He pretends to be a cowboy.
He doesn't really be a cowboy.
He does.
No,
he
no,
said
no.
yeehaw there at the end of one of his videos recently.
a steel.
He's an outlaw.
Steel town worker.
Yeah. Blue collar.
Hey,
collar.
little
It's
girl,
John
is your
Moxley.
daddy home?
Yeah,
Moxley
that's
definitely
creepy.
sang that to her
John
now,
Moxley
is it?
famously on fire.
Yeah. Balls Mahoney,
Yeah.
right? I had the fortune of meeting him with Irish Whip Wrestling. He was in Spring Hill. He accidentally
Mahoney in Spring Hill, wow.
he has so much scar tissue on his head that like he took a punch and he just split open the kid show, bleeding. He came down during the match to the owner and apologized, and then went back and wrestled the match.
Top man.
But he was out smoking cigarettes. I smoked at the time. He smoked Silca Ultra. He only had 2 teeth in his head.
Jesus.
Lovely man, right? Really nice man. I said, I love the chair shot that you hit Masato Tanaka with at ECW One Night Stand 2. He goes, thanks very much. And then he told me a story about how their time got cut and they could have had a better match than Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle if they didn't get caught. And I was like,
Nice.
cool. But
Tanaka probably could.
then he had said
Balls no.
an angle, we were just chatting and I was trying to pick his brain, and an angle that he wanted to do in ECW is his wife or his partner at the time had a brother who has Down syndrome, and he wanted to be a heel and go through the crowd and like be giving shit to the crowd and then punch his brother-in-law. No one would know it was his brother-in-law, but punch a Down syndrome person in the face and thinking that this was going to get absolutely nuclear heat. It's perfect, but he was told no, it's going to be the wrong kind of heat. Even though it's part of a storyline, you know.
I don't know what the payoff is, though. You know,
the payoff is then you're going to have a wrestler come out defend.
If that's
that kid,
if that's where it's going, and that kid obviously agrees with it and is like taken care of, and they've all worked out the thing, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But in and of itself, it's a dumb idea. If it's connected to an actual storyline and it's connected to what that character is and where that character is going, and it's the type of character who's going to do that, then much like JBL harassing Eddie Guerrero's mother, like if you're the kind of man
it's a heat
who's going to harass some lad's ma. Like that, if that's part of your character and logically part of your character,
you
then
have to build up heels, though. You have to build up heels.
If you can build that into a storyline, then I don't think there's anything terribly problematic.
Like if Balls did that and it was like never referenced again, but that was just part of Balls' character going, what a piece of shit.
He's a legit piece of shit.
If it wasn't referenced like immediately, it could be referenced in 4 or 5 months. It could be referenced in a year when he gets his comeuppance. Because eventually that's what you're doing. You're building up the heels who are doing these dastardly things. That's how you build them up. You see him do shit things. One of them, that is an ultimate shitty thing to do. So you might be able to skip a few steps and get there faster.
Jesus, you're skipping a lot of steps there. You're skipping the back rake. You're skipping the eye poke.
Yeah,
you're skipping a low blow.
You're not even thinking about headlocks.
Like we went to
rest holds.
We went to training like it was day 3 when we were learning strikes.
I didn't actually fucking punch Down syndrome child until the 5th day.
Yeah.
Well, then, like, you know, you're just behind the schedule there.
Yeah, I don't know what they're teaching them these days, but it's like
we're on Canadian.
Speed it up, like
We're on Canadian destroyers of people with alopecia.
Like, there's a reason that you don't need to be taught these things, because like they're not things that should necessarily factor into like a wrestling story.
But you can do them in telly.
You can do, but even in telly you can't. Like right now, it's like you would not be able to cast someone like that. I don't know. I wouldn't be too confident that Daniel Day-Lewis would get the part of Christy Brown. Like, you know, genuinely, like, and
let me see that left foot, man.
But I just think if you actually have people who have certain like disabilities or like learning difficulties or just like, you know, whatever they are as a person, like letting them play the role rather than
tell that to all the fucking Americans that are losing out roles to English people.
But I think it's great that you got someone like
Cillian Murphy played Oppenheimer.
This is the thing. This is where it starts to get thorny. But isn't it great that like Anthony Bones in like 2024 could come out and like his gimmick isn't that he's a gay man, but he can use it and he can happens to be a gay man, and he can reference it at certain times and like get cheers from the crowd, which is like completely different than 30 years ago when you've got
He would have Adrian.
Adrian Street.
Yeah,
Adrian
Street.
Adonis,
I think,
Adrian
like, there-
Street, Gold. Well, Goldust is 30 years ago now, almost.
true.
there's a like I suppose there was Zach Gowan was obviously one that was
No, he had two legs. It was just CGI'd out.
No,
that was done by a two-legged wrestler.
you know, like there's another guy called Gregory Iron. Is that his name?
Yeah, Greg Iron.
He's got cerebral palsy.
Cerebral palsy, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he retired last year or the year before.
He was really going for a Royal Rumble spot at some
Yeah,
point.
like-
But I just think and there's a guy in NXT at the moment who is he's Miles Bourne is deaf. He's partially deaf.
Oh, yeah.
He's mostly deaf, I think. And like so to see like wrestlers who actually have like disabilities.
No more blindfold matches.
Get two blind guys.
I don't think blind wrestlers are necessarily going to be a thing that's going to take off, but like to see wrestlers who have like, you know, who might be missing a limb or might have cerebral palsy or might be deaf or like have something that's got like
The micro brawlers.
that would have years ago would have
minis,
held
yeah.
them back in wrestling, and now they can wrestle and their characters aren't
This is saddled with this thing.
this is what's
They're a character who happens to also
happens to have these
Well,
things. And I
to be
think
fair,
that's
micro brawlers are they all play upon the fact that they're little people,
yeah.
little Aussie, and little. All that kind of stuff.
yeah, but I think if you had a respectful like division for
If the
people who are
division
shorter in
was
stature,
treated as an accomplishment or an achievement, like if you have a mini division, or
Yeah.
it used to be called
But
minis.
but
minis,
don't call
yeah.
it the mini
Yeah.
division.
I
know,
Remember
but,
Max
like,
Mini? He was fucking
he was
class.
great, yeah.
Like that's doing deadly stuff.
Also,
like,
like,
if
one
you
of-
treated it with
Rey
dignity
Mysterio.
and respect and winning the
Taz.
Marcus
Rey
Stunt.
Mysterio became the world heavyweight champion.
yeah, it's amazing. But I mean,
And he did that off the back of Eddie Guerrero passing away.
Yeah, but he was he was the most jacked 5'6" guy in the world.
Yeah, like-
Eddie's not looking at you from up there.
What
He's
was
in
it?
hell.
oh man, talk about exploit. Oh, so death angles. There's too many exploitive angles, but we haven't talked on death angles.
we haven't even touched that.
Brian
massively.
Pillman.
Brian Pillman, the gun.
Like
Pillman's got a gun.
But also just
No,
the
his
fact that,
wife. You were saying.
but Pillman and the
Oh,
gun,
sorry, yeah,
Pillman and the gun wasn't mad.
They had to go on TV and
Exploitative.
apologize.
They did it, yeah. It was really controversial because Brian Pillman was the first, wrestler to say fuck on WWF television in live, and then he then apparently shot Steve Austin. But that was it. Like, it was a pure fiction. But also, it was happening with two characters where, like, I would believe Pillman would shoot another wrestler, and I would believe that Stone Cold Steve Austin would break into another man's home to beat him. So that chimed absolutely perfectly in that regard. The exploitation of Brian Pillman's widow by getting her on air the night after he's been found dead in a hotel room, and then have fucking Vince McMahon of all people, you know what I mean? It's hardly fucking Michael Parkinson there, asking her questions about his drug use and what might have happened to him.
Imagine Gay Byrne doing it.
Like that seemed like a way of like
Bill O'Reilly.
Vince,
Gabriel would have just patronized her completely.
like
Okey
Vince was
dokey.
on TV passing the blame off WWF.
yeah.
He was.
That's all that
Like,
was.
man, you were his boss. Were you not
Anorando.
meant to be drug testing him?
That for me is one of the most distasteful and exploitative things I've ever seen, because it's exploiting real life tragedy that's literally just happened. And that one is particularly egregious because it's not connected to any storyline.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
always
going to
find it-
progress into anything. It would be an amazing thing if, like, obviously Vince is fucking not around now, but like for Lexus King, Brian Pillman Jr. to utilize as a potential story point in the future.
Yeah.
If his character
Yeah.
was to
Like,
go
fuck
to
you,
war
Vince.
with
I
the
always find
the
those tribute shows to
Federation.
be very. Like when they're getting when
It's
you
a
see
catch-22
when
there.
you see the wrestlers crying and they're talking about their experiences with the person, I'm like,
Is this exploitive?
Yeah.
See, I think there's a catch-22 there. If you do the tribute show, you can be accused of being exploiting someone's death for ratings or whatever. If you don't do it, you're accused of not honoring their memory or whatever the way a company should. Like
Yeah.
the Brody Lee one, it's still the highest rated AEW show on Cage Match. I think it's probably the best episode of a weekly TV show I've ever seen. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
I still remember, like, I don't remember the late 90s watching too many Raws on a Friday night. I know I sat there and watched them, but there's only two ones that actually, like, stick in my mind. It's Austin with the Bang 316 gun.
and
Never
Vince
forget
pissing
that.
himself.
Yeah, I have distinct memories of watching that live, and also the Owen Hart tribute one. Distinct memories of Stone Cold coming out at the end crying with holding up the can of beer to the Titantron.
I don't think he was crying now. I don't think he was.
He looked teary
I don't know. It's hard to tell. I don't think Austin and Owen were on the best terms after the botch.
after the
But he still
neck
went
wreck.
out and he.
Yeah, I think he looked teary. I'll check that up after. Maybe that's just my memory.
Was Stone Cold
This is
crying?
your distinct memory, Morrow.
Distinct
so-
memory that might not be correct.
Morrow's distinct memory is Stone Cold Steve Austin crying. Which I don't think happened in any other context.
I think we're going to leave it there.
No, go on now. Stone Cold, he's balling anyway. He's not able to perform.
Go back to Vital Mansion from the start then. Why are you crying?
Yeah, Steve, why
Fuck
did you
Vital
cry?
Mansion. Yeah, so I think the tribute shows aren't exploitative. They're nice.
Yeah, and also, like, all the wrestlers always say that they give you the choice if you want to go out. It's not like you have to go out. Like, poor fucking Brian Pillman's widow was going like, geez, if I don't want to go on television, my husband just died yesterday, but maybe if I do, they're going to give me some money, which might support me in my pregnancy and my fucking 4 children.
Yeah.
That's exploited.
William Regal knew what he was doing with the Christmas. Oh. See that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but also the fact that he even went on air to say that. He was kind of like looking at the camera, kind of like
wink, wink.
it's like, yeah, I enjoyed working with him. Feel like he might have murdered his family. Not sure. Gonna leave it there.
We're going to leave it there
We'll
now.
find out soon enough.
He was a
But
good, he was a
in
good
my
wrestler.
opinion, he murdered his family.
That's what his eyes were
the
saying.
Benoit one was super sketch because, there was rumours.
And what was Vince doing in the ring as well? Because he was dead from the week before.
He died the
He
week
died the week before the
He
limo.
had the limo explosion.
limo exploded.
which was an exploitive ankle in that, like, it exploited our desire to see him die in a fucking limo.
People have been saying for years, can't wait till Vince dies. So wrestling
Particularly in
can
a
be
limo,
proper.
like,
Yeah.
I think
Paul London,
it's
he
karma.
was buzzing with it. He was
Paul
like
London,
that.
that was the end of his mainstream career.
That's
wasn't
why
it?
you don't take 3 yips before you fucking go into the ring.
He got fucking pure bet by JBL as well during, that Mexican,
They really like
during that Mexican angle.
JPL. Bet up
Paul
a lot of
London
people during that.
is Paul London a Mexican?
No, but he was dressed as a luchador.
Oh,
and
Jesus, of
JBL,
course
it's a
Stiffed
sick
him.
clothesline and sick powerbomb. Poor little Paul London.
Yeah, JBL was their fucking hatchet man for a lot of things up until that time where Stevie Richards actually cleaned him out of it.
Which was
Yeah.
awesome.
Now again, that's using real life incidents that have happened between wrestlers to book a short program between the Texan multimillionaire and the Blue World Order.
The Blue Meanie
Look, it was fun at the time. I
and
guess.
Nova. I think that's it.
What have we? What's our? We kind of come down to
Yeah,
consensus.
wrestling can do it depending performer and I suppose respect.
Does it need to do it?
Right.
Does it need to do it?
I think wrestling is a fucking.
Wrestling needs to do everything and nothing.
It needs to move with the
wrestling, it
times.
can be everything.
It needs to
Yeah.
move to the times. It needs to respond to the world in which it exists.
Is there room for passionate wrestling fans where one of them might have a production company and the other might be a renowned television writer and the other is Morrow? I don't know much about your back history, Morrow. Sorry.
Look,
and the other is
I keep it that way.
yeah.
I'm not even a TV writer.
There you go.
And the other is Kieran Dunn. Like, we should make a wrestling promotion. I said it's my dream. We'll make it. We'll do a 16-episode arc.
I think
We're all
We'll call it Bang Bros.
the Bang Bros. Yeah,
the thing that prohibits this a lot, I think, is the fact that, like, wrestling is such a it's a freelancer sport.
Yes.
It's still stuck in its carnival roots, in that these performers travel country to country and town to town, independent. Then if you're in a company, you do that. Like, Tony Khan's really the only person who's kind of like, I have so much money, I can buy all these action figures and make them fight each other
do what
on
I
the
want
biggest
to.
scale possible.
I like.
that is what it is. Though it is like just playing with your wrestling figures.
It is, yeah.
But
It's class.
God,
He's living our dream.
I just
Are
want
you
like,
with your wrestling figures? Are you doing racism angles?
I never did a wrestling angle with my wrestling figures. I'm 5 years into a TEW 2020 save right now.
Any racism angles?
No, I did actually. Dragunov and Takeshita sold out to Tokyo Dome for Rev Pro.
Oh yeah, probably 7 stars, huh? Meltzer.
Well, I do give them star ratings myself.
And so you should.
Yeah.
So you should.
I think
There's no racism angles, no.
look, to be honest, I think when you've got such a diverse amount of performers who are like a load of types of bad guys and a load of types of good guys or gals, you got the baby faces, you got the heels, like,
Stay away from the tropes.
yeah, like, there's room for certain types of tropes. I think it might be okay to have a character who I think
Yakuza.
I think the key is to be learnable, to be teachable. I mean, you could be like a monster Russian heel in the 80s, like fucking
Koloff or
like Nikita Koloff or whatever, and then like
Rusev.
and Rusev, dude, Rusev maybe not.
Bulgarian foreign dastard.
Yeah, look, but also for people to be like changeable and go, hey, I was kind of weird and fucking racist, and I was weird and imperialistic there for a while, and actually I got used to the country.
Yeah,
like,
you can do a redemption arc, like, you know.
They're literally the Iron Sheik, you know.
Yeah, and the Koloffs, like, they teamed with Dusty, and
Yeah, they made it up, like.
yeah,
But no, I think that's got to be the thing in wrestling.
We need more wrestlers that are matadors from Spain. We need more wrestlers that are mimes from France.
from France. Yeah,
We need more Nazis from Germany.
I need
We need more Vikings from
Posh,
Scandinavia.
snoozy English fellas.
Yeah.
Irish men and
I
women
need
that
a-
love to fight.
an IKEA general manager from Sweden.
No, Vikings. They're all just Vikings.
I
But we need more berserkers.
could do it at one or two.
Actually,
more
Eric and Ivar, they're
we
not
have
actually.
to. We have to. Well, they're Viking teams, but they're not.
Yeah, but they're not from like
Not from
that's
Scandinavia.
That's cultural appropriation.
that's a cultural appropriation right there. A
They were
lot
called
of the
the
next.
Actually, no.
Viking
Leif
Raiders.
Erickson would have getting across.
There's a load of
or he was
culture. I mean,
Greenland.
like, Kamala's cultural appropriation.
Did they go from the War Machine to the War Raiders?
No, the
to
Viking-
Raiders.
No, they went
The
from
War Machine.
War Machine to
To
War Raiders,
Raiders
to
to
the
the
Viking
Viking
experience.
The Viking experience.
Then-
They dropped that after
That
a
was
night. Yeah,
Vince
yeah.
McMahon's one
Yeah.
because it got slated so badly online.
They went to the Viking Raiders.
Viking Raiders, which I think is their name, isn't it? Now
don't know
I think it is.
They were so cool.
You need a Viking Express. The Midnight Viking Express.
Look, like I said, like people are from places. People are, whatever their fucking
we are all
orientation is, their size, their shape, their personality. Like, be a version of that thing.
Well,
you know?
I'm not
Like,
necessarily like we're Irish, but we're not necessarily like if I was in another country, I wouldn't be fucking espousing massive Irish values and that kind of
But
stuff.
either is Becky. Either is
Yeah, I know.
Becky
That's what I'm
Lynch,
saying.
and,
Like,
Finn Balor.
we've
Finn
moved
Balor and
past that.
JD are in a kind of an almost like Hispanic coded
faction.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is a nice man with
With an Australian-
run by an Australian woman.
with an Australian woman.
Like that's a sign of the time stuff. That's not like
it's
But like loads of people were giving out about WWE saying like, oh, they just threw all the Latinos into the same match.
they did
at
do that too,
WrestleMania.
though, as well.
Well,
Like,
that's
and
based
then
on
they
like
have-
literally you've got two expansive Latino factions that have just kind of
Yeah, but
fractured versions
the
of each
point that you have Latino factions, despite the point that anytime there's a black wrestler, they're like put them in a nation faction with other kind of black wrestlers.
I know, but also like it's just a
Like
truth
you have
of
the street,
humanity.
you have Street Profits and
other. But yeah, okay, so
and Bobby
but-
Lashley.
but
You have
that's-
Karrion Kross with these kind of like
can we
maybe it could be somewhat Aryan kind of the way
Eastern
you look like.
European.
Yeah.
Bobby Lashley Street Profits, and then also like the Hurt Business, which I think is one of the great unrealized
I
factions.
love the Hurt
But that at least was like that wasn't playing on any that was an inversion of stereotypes.
Yeah.
So you got a bunch. The faction is black men, but they're African American athletes who are going. We're the best African American athletes. We're going to watch each other's backs. We're not going to take any shit. We're going to effectively be like an African American version of the Four Horsemen,
Yeah,
which has not really been done in a major way in any
but like also as well, like
mainstream.
I lived away abroad for 10 years. I only spoke to Irish people. Like my faction in a foreign country for 10 years was
We got the scoop for the shoulder.
like basically Irish people.
I was the exact
you know?
same in Australia.
Yeah.
I went to
Like-
Irish bars.
Yeah, of course. That's all I did.
I found it weird.
Like not everyone. Like
I lived in Cork,
culturally-
mostly talks to Kilkenny people.
Yeah,
There you go.
see,
There you go. We went
I
to
don't blame you for
10
that.
pints of Handsome in Cork one night.
Yeah, we
That was a
should
good night.
go out nice talking to Kilkenny people.
Yeah.
Talking about Kilkenny people.
Talking about
talking about Kilkenny.
talking in
people.
Kilkenny.
See, do you remember the hill? The hill and the Castle Park. Yeah, so do I.
what a good-
Why?
Tears streaming out of her face. And two regular Stone Cold Steve Austins.
I just cut.
That's been the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. I don't know where we got with this conversation, but thank you very much for listening. Like, subscribe, sound off in the comments. Give a shit. We love that stuff. I'm Shane O'Keefe. This is Morrow. This is Morto. And that's been the Wrestling Fan Wrestling Show. Go fuck yourselves.